Hi guys, hopefully you can hear us okay. If not, just let us know. So I'm here doing a live today with Amanda Neil from GIYA Running, and we're going to be talking for probably about 30 minutes about the Metabolic Balance program for athletes. So I'm just going to start off. Thanks for coming along today, Amanda, and joining us.
My pleasure.
So I'm going to start off and just talk a little bit about give you some very, very basic information about metabolic balance if this is your first exposure to it. The first thing I'll say is this doesn't replace the general information session that I've done about metabolic balance because that just takes far too long to go through. If you go to one of my previous videos, it's called the Metabolic Balance Information Session. You can literally listen to a 50-minute session about exactly what metabolic balance is, and how it all works and that sort of thing. And then but this will give you a good insight to why it's an effective program for athletes and a little bit how it works. So first, the only thing I will say about MB is that it is a very structured program, and basically what we do is we put together a food plan, nothing particularly exotic. It's just literally proteins, carbohydrate or proteins, fruits, vegetables, starches, and very clean food. But that list of foods is actually based on an individual's personal health conditions, any medications that they have, any health symptoms that are abnormal, and also quite a large spectrum of blood tests. So it's very, very unique. Look, the reason why, and sorry, the way that the food on Metabolic Balance is structured is it's quite simple. It's literally three well-balanced meals a day made up of those individualized foods that are basically put together for that individual. And I will say I've put quite a lot of people through Metabolic Balance now, close to 80, and I have never ever seen a food plan that is the same. So some people are a little bit skeptical and they think, oh yeah, well, is it really individualized, or is it just 15 different templates and you get one of them? I can tell you now that it's very specific to the individual. And when we put together a food plan, it's me in conjunction with Metabolic Balance headquarters, which is actually in Germany. And the whole actual program and company is led by doctors and nutritionists in Europe. So it's a pretty exciting program. But also at the same time, it's quite simple, really, isn't it, Amanda? It's not that complicated.
Yeah, once you learn the basics and you stick to those basics and the basic rules, I think it is a very livable program.
Yeah. So Amanda's coming on today because Amanda's a running coach, and of all sports that Metabolic Balance works well for, I would definitely say endurance sports athletes can benefit from it. Admittedly, I haven't put anybody through the program who is involved in any high power sports or anything like that, and I really don't think it would be suitable. It is good for those who need an endurance base, so runners, trail runners, maybe triathletes, long distance cyclists, and that sort of thing. So Amanda did her own Metabolic Balance program about, oh my goodness, when was it?
It was late October last year.
Oh my gosh, it was a long time. I can't believe die. Wow. Okay, yeah. So I guess, Amanda, we could start by going through, so maybe give our listeners an idea of what sort of involvement in running you have, and how, what sort of Ks you're running and what your goals were at the time.
Yeah. So I do long distance running. I really enjoy long distance running. I've done a fair few marathons, also done some ultra runs. I suppose my long-term goal for it, and even like in Metabolic Balance, was just to be the best that I possibly could at it and to get the most out of my body that I could. But also, I'm not getting any younger, so I've also got to take care of my body. I've got to think of longevity. I wanted to make sure that I was fueling my body appropriately and correctly so that I could continue in the sport as long as I possibly could.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. And so let's start right back at the very beginning, like with the exception of maybe the cleanse. But how, let's talk about your original like food plan and how you had to eat. Do you think it was really different to how you were eating before?
I think for me, I've always kind of kept and tried to be as have a healthy food plan that I've kept to. Of course, we go through seasons where we get off track and we get slack with things and that sort of thing. And I think I'd probably maybe before I did Metabolic Balance, I'd probably had come into a little bit of a season of that where I'd got a little slack on things. And I suppose the biggest adaptation and change for me at the initial point was portion size. I learned a lot from that in the process. I think I was overeating to what I actually needed, and I've linked that. I've taken that even from way back at the beginning, and I do that now. That was like a huge adjustment for me, and I actually learned, probably for me personally, what my body actually needed and what it required, as opposed to what I was giving it at the time.
Do you think all of your portions were smaller on Metabolic Balance, or do you think like, for example, a lot of athletes say to me they end up eating more protein than they were on Metabolic? What do you think?
Yes. Protein portion, definitely so. Yes. And I was actually quite surprised at I keep to it, of course, today, because I've been on it for long term now, and I've been in the maintenance mode for quite some time, really, since December last year. And even I still go through stages where I will measure things and that sort of thing. And I am still quite even this morning, when I was making my breakfast, I'm like, I had some chicken and vegetables for lunch today, and it was a decent size of portion of chicken. So yes, with the protein, I would definitely agree with you on that.
I do find that a lot of athletes who come through the program, they like the three meals are almost more even. So sometimes people find that they're really overeating at nighttime, but they're not fueling properly at morning and lunch, and that's really important, because often that's after you've done a training session. And then I've had lots of people say, I was eating like more on the plate before, but in particular, probably not getting quite enough protein.
And the snacking thing. So, I suppose I was, even though I do a lot of activity, a lot of exercise, during the day, I sit at a desk. I work at a desk job at an office. And so I would have that bag of almonds in my drawer, or, a packet of cashews, or and I would be, you know what, I'll pull that out and I'd have like snack, and I'd be snacking fairly much constantly throughout the day, more than what I needed, sort of thing. And so that was one of the other, adjustments for me as well. But in that initial journey, in that initial transition, even though, once you learnt the rules and you made that initial transition, and you pull back your running activity.
Because we pull back to start off with and just let the food kind of do its thing. And even though, for some of us who are highly active, that initially can be hard, but it's something you need to do. You must do it. It's so important for lots of reasons. I mean, to allowing your body to adjust to that change. And if you stick to that and do what, you guide, your athlete or your person through, I think the long-term benefits will, kick in a lot quicker. I think one of the uniquest things about Metabolic Balance is it's not really like about, I think it addresses something that a lot of other plans or programs may not, and that is inflammation. And I just keep coming back to that because I've had quite a few, maybe half a dozen or so athletes now go through a Metabolic Balance program. And like, it's just because they're eating the foods that are literally like perfect for them. They get this very like low inflammatory environment. So funny things happen. You know, people say to me, oh, I've had this niggle for like 3 years, and then all of a sudden they're 4 or 5 or 6 weeks into MB and they're like, it's just gone. Or
Yes.
I had one lady do the program once, and she was seeing like a physio and a chiro every week, and it was down to like every like 6 weeks, because just that systemic inflammation load reduced so much. And I actually think the snacking thing is part of that, because we don't really, because food's so available to us, and we just do it out of boredom and just because we do.
Definitely.
We don't really give the body a chance to just kind of like digest properly and then just rest. Like, we're always making it digest. We're always stimulating the liver and the kidneys and all of this, and nothing else happens properly because it's exhausted. It's like having a car and putting it in the garage at night but leaving the engine on and then wondering why it's only going to last half as long.
Yes. Actually, it's an interesting point you make that on the inflammation, because I mean, I had this conversation with you before, and I was actually thinking about it this morning. And I remember before I started it, and I would have brought it up with you, that, you know, I used to get this constant ache, you know, and in my elbow, and it would come and go, and sometimes it was like really like painful sort of thing. And at the time I was putting it down to like, oh, you know, I've worked at a computer and operated a mouse for like 20 odd years, and I was thinking, oh, this is RSI and I'm getting older, I've just got to put up with this sort of thing. But since I've actually been on the Metabolic Balance program, that went away very quickly, and that has not come back since. And that was kind of like a constant for me. And so that, in the inflammation side, yes, you know, that I can testify that definitely helped in that for me. But the other thing with inflammation that I noticed, particularly like with my running and those sorts of things on the Metabolic Balance, that my recovery time after a long distance or an event or even a long hard run is much quicker.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And even though, you know, you've still got to be wise in that and making sure that, you know, you're pulling back after, you know, big events or long training and give your body time to recover. I just know that the muscle recovery, I'm feeling it and sensing it, that it's a lot quicker, that after strenuous activity, that fatigue in that muscles is recovering a lot quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Cool. Which is probably another thing that all athletes want. To recover faster. I guess going back to the fact that, you know, we're really talking about MB specifically and why it's good for athletes here, I wanted to just mention a couple of things as to how it works from my perspective, as far as putting somebody general through metabolic balance versus putting someone through who does more exercise. So there is no rule book as far as metabolic balance and athletes. So with a metabolic balance plan, I start all athletes exactly as I would start a normal person. So whatever the food list is that we get back from Germany, from headquarters, whatever the quantities are, the 3 strict meals a day, that's what you get at least for the first 2 weeks. I've very rarely changed it before then. But then with athletes, so with a person who might just be doing it to manage a health condition or because they need to lose weight to reach a healthy weight range, I would make less changes to the program, and especially the quantities. Whereas with an athlete, by the time we get to 2 weeks in and we've had a good rest from exercise, and usually even if the person hasn't got the intention of losing weight, there will be weight loss in those first couple of weeks, especially for athletes, because usually they're holding on to some kind of fluid and they're inflamed and all that sort of thing. So after those first 2 weeks, we definitely start increasing the quantities to kind of start supporting training. With athletes as well, Amanda's talked about the 3 meal structure. So that's one of the main concepts of metabolic balance. And, you know, I think we've come a long way in nutrition to get back to the very beginning, really, because we've had lots of arguments about how many meals we should eat in a day and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the MB program is really like 3 proper meals.
Yes.
And if you think about it, like I say to a lot of people, can you think of a snack that's really that nutritious that you can make in under 5 minutes? Probably not. However, with athletes, I sometimes do add in an extra, whether it's a small 4th meal or some kind of snack that comes in immediately after training, or if they're having a very long day, so they're waking up at 4 in the morning and going to bed at 9 o'clock at night to fit in their training, then we might make some exceptions to that rule and have some extra food added in. But the concept of having a good break of at least 4 hours between meals is very, very important. And I think that's why, again, the program does reap some good anti-inflammatory benefits for athletes. The other thing that we kind of alter is the carbohydrates used on an original unadulterated, I suppose, metabolic balance plan are very, very low glycemic index carbohydrates, and sometimes we'll add in some different grains, or we might use rices or quinoa or something like that instead of the carbohydrate that is originally on a person's plan if I'm doing it for an athlete, just to kind of add some more variety, and maybe support a heavier training load. But basically, apart from that, the program is really adaptable to an athlete. It's good, clean food. The meals are simple, adequate protein, lots of plant food, fruit, adequate water. It's not really complicated, and it's not really rocket science. So Amanda's very structured with her lifestyle and her nutrition, and she essentially sticks to her program Monday to Friday, and then kind of, on the weekends, things are always a little bit different for everyone as far as what we eat and our lifestyle. But, excuse me, you've seen some ongoing benefits from it, haven't you, from your running perspective?
Definitely. Several things I've seen, and particularly one, that fueling.
Mm-hmm.
So I have found on the Metabolic Balance program that I need to take on a whole heap less fuel actually during the activity than what I used to before, and I can actually sustain without taking on fuel for a lot longer.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got some fat adaptation benefits without specifically, necessarily.
Yep. Definitely. And I can, I can increase the intensity and sustain that for longer as well.
Yeah.
Has been another added bonus. And of course,
that's good to know.
Yeah.
Because that is something I'm mindful of with athletes. Just like I said, sometimes adding in some different carbohydrates to make sure they can sustain the higher intensity sessions as well, not just
initially,
the long stuff. Yeah.
Not in the beginning stages, but as my body adapted and became used to that, definitely that's been a long-term thing that I've seen.
Cool. Awesome.
Definitely. And of course, you shed those couple of extra kilos along the way, which, I did. And that has made me, I suppose, lighter as a runner, which has also increased my speed.
Yep.
I've been, anyone who follows me on Strava or those sorts of things, I'm like, another PB. I'm like, yeah. So I've been having some great goals and seeing some great advancements in that.
Yeah.
That wasn't necessarily an initial goal, but it's been a bonus along the way.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's kind of probably helped motivate me to stay on that as a permanent thing.
Yeah, cool. The other thing that I was going to say, we do have to, I think, emphasize that the metabolic balance style of eating, it is very clean.
Very.
A lot of people come to me, or they come and do the program like, oh no, I already eat really, really clean. But then even for me as a nutritionist, when I first kind of saw MB, I was like, wow, it's really clean. But I think that's obviously another reason why it works. And because really, you're only allowed to use sort of clean stocks, some bits of really good oil, lots of like herbs and spices and that kind of thing. But there's no packets or anything, not even like a bit of soy sauce or anything. Obviously, that's another reason why it works. And I think you kind of just you just adapt your cooking style eventually to suit. I mean, I often will sort of introduce, some other condiments into people's programs where it might be like, okay, well, you could have a bit of tamari or some lime juice or some lemon juice or maybe even a clean mustard. But in general, I think you get the best results when you keep it really clean. And at the end of the day, we spend too much time trying to create master chef restaurant quality meals in our kitchen 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
And no wonder, our digestion gets a bit haywire as a result and whatnot.
Yeah. I actually really like the metabolic balance, the clean eating style. And I've, in the last season, like 6 to 8 months, cook with herbs more than what I ever have, and I love it. I really love doing that. I love experimenting with the different herbs. I've even kind of got a little I shouldn't say that I've got the green finger. My husband has grown me a little veggie garden out the back, herb garden, where I just go out and pick some, fresh parsley or fresh, basil or, rosemary. And it's amazing. You don't need to add that much to it to get really good flavor in your food. I mean, garlic and ginger is my go-to. I really like, using those in my cooking. But my grocery trolley has changed. I mean, I don't buy sauces or condiments or that sort of thing, at all, really.
And I think that that's where, people often try and argue that eating well is expensive and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that people buy in general that you just don't need. And so that's definitely probably a good example. But Amanda and I have actually come up with a bit of a sort of, I guess, a program that we're offering together. So we wanted to talk about that today as well. So for those of you who have watched the general information about metabolic balance, and I'm happy to post the link to the video here after this live, what you'll know about MB is that when you come and do a metabolic balance program, it doesn't matter who you do it with, whether it's me or one of the other MB practitioners in Australia, you come in, you commit, and essentially you commit to receiving a food plan, and that's it. You're going to come and see me sort of 7 times. So we might do those 7 consultations in 3 months. We might do them in 4. We might do them in 6 months. It just depends on how much support somebody needs. Now, that's a rule, for want of a better way of saying it, that comes from headquarters down to us as practitioners. I love it because it means that when I have somebody who comes on and wants to do the program with me, I'm not going to muck around and work with them for 2 weeks and then they're going to decide, oh, it's too hard. Nice to meet you. See you later. Like, they're really committed to kind of giving it a go and sort of making it a lifestyle, I suppose. But one of the things that I felt was missing with athletes in MB is that, for a start, I find athletes tend to be, they're pretty in touch with their bodies, and they usually are, they're usually pretty good on their nutrition already. So they sometimes don't need quite as much support. But a lot of athletes that I get coming to do MB have got a lot of issues with inflammation. They might be having issues with ongoing injuries. They're not getting faster. If anything, they're getting slower. They're not getting lighter. They're getting heavier. And it's just, their food's just out. And sometimes my very naive, my very limited knowledge, but I do think, I think this person is kind of overtraining and they're just not giving themselves rest days. But, it's better to hear that from a professional. So Amanda is a running coach. And so what we are offering now is for those athletes that come on and do the MB program, not necessarily everyone, because some of them will already have a coach or a plan that works for them. But for some, it'll just be like, you'll work with me for 6 consults. And one of those consults that's included in the whole program will actually be working with Amanda. So Amanda's going to talk about exactly what she offers as far as her coaching.
Yeah. So I've been coaching for a while now, and for anyone, I've also who knows me, I run with a group called River City Runners, and I've also been taking the speed sessions for that group, probably for about, I think it's about 5 years now.
Yeah.
It's actually been a while. And so kind of like, and because of my own running as well and my own running experience, I've kind of developed some different running programs over time and had some good success with that. And so what we're going to offer together in this program is an individualized program.
Yeah.
That runs for a runs for a 4-week period. It gives you a good overall round benefits of all the different types of runs, some education around that, why you do different kinds of runs in a program, the importance of resting, having rest days, and it will be based on the individual, because just like how you talk about metabolic balance being built for an individual, well, so is a running program, because we're all different, we've got different goals, we've got different things we want to achieve, and we're all at a different place. And so I would spend time with you talking a little bit about that, finding out a little bit about yourself, what your goals are, what you're doing currently, and what you want to achieve. And then we will develop a individual program around those things based on some of the concepts, not only from metabolic balance, but that I've learned, but also some of the things that I've learned about running and training and sustaining that long term.
So it's like a 4-week training program.
4-week, and those, that'll give you a good overall insight into some great concepts about training.
Awesome. So the way I can kind of envisage this working is like, if somebody was genuinely interested in the metabolic balance program, first of all, please don't come to us 3 weeks before a marathon and say, oh my God, I want to start tomorrow. That's not going to happen. Sorry. But you need to, the best time to do something like this is probably right at the beginning of a season, or even, maybe you've just done some big races and you're willing to just step back from your training initially, because the first couple of weeks on MB, ideally, I just don't want people to do any exercise, particularly athletes. I'm like, you probably haven't had a good rest for a long time, so just don't train for a couple of weeks. So, we would get you started on your food plan, get you through that first couple of weeks of, settling the food down and just getting having a break from exercise. And then we look at your food plan again, make some adjustments, and allow a reasonable amount of training to come back in. Check in probably at the third consultation, make any other adjustments that need to be made around the program in terms of how much you're eating, what sort of food you're actually eating, and making sure that it's starting to fit in, nicely with where you're heading. And then I'd probably be like, right, time to work with Amanda now. Really nail down what's the big event that you'll, or what's, what do you want out of your training perhaps, and then you can have a session with her and then get that 4-week plan sorted out, so you've got a bit of a tester of what is my running, or my specifically this would work for runners, what can I achieve with, when I'm really marrying together good nutrition and good coaching, I suppose. And then and that kind of really gives you a good kind of it really theoretically should give you the knowledge to go forth and conquer. So my goal for people who do a full MB program is really just to kind of get to know themselves and their bodies, and to not really feel like, cool, that was great, in 6 months time, right, what's the next diet to follow? It's not about a diet. It's just okay, let's just eat real whole foods that work for us, and eat when we're and eat the right amount, so that we're not over full and we're not hungry and that sort of thing. And let's also make sure that the training we're doing is right for us and sustainable. And it's that delicate balance of getting lots out of it, but also not doing so much that it's burning
yourself out. And because if you do that that might be okay in the short term, but long term, if you continue that, you will hit a running lull.
Cool. So, did you have anything else that you wanted to add, Amanda? Do you think we've covered everything?
No, I think we've pretty well
Cool.
covered it. I think I mean, I suppose for me, just how much I love the program. The Metabolic Balance program, and it's sustainable, it's healthy, it's good for you. You can do it in the long term. As I said at the beginning, I've been in the maintenance program like basically since December last year.
Yeah.
So we are like now mid July, and I've found that very easy to maintain long term.
Yeah.
On my own, I've learned, keeping to that same structure, and your body adapts. It gets, it's healthier for it.
Yeah, awesome. All right, guys. Well, if you've got any questions off the back of this, send me a private message or give me a call, or use the book now button if you want to book an initial consultation. As I said earlier, please listen to this in conjunction with the information session on MB, which actually talks a little bit more specifically about not only, today we focused on running and MB for athletes, but you also need to understand what MB is itself. And we hope that you enjoyed it, and thanks for tuning in, whether you're watching this now or you're watching it in 6 months' time.
Yeah, thank you.